I've seen trends come and go. I've seen platforms rise and fall. I can bring all of that experience into how I mentor my students and my clients into shaping a social media strategy and really an entire marketing strategy that works for them and that kind of stands the test of time.
Welcome to An Entrepreneur's Vibes, the podcast that gives insight into the minds of visionary entrepreneurs and business leaders. Brought to you by The Right Direction, a leading professional and technical writing company based in North America. Each episode, we explore the stories and experiences of those who dared to dream, took the leap, and built their own empires. So if you're just starting out your entrepreneurial journey or you're already a seasoned business pro, you'll find inspiration, knowledge, and good vibes right here. Our guest is a social media marketing mentor, strategist, and the founder of Andréa. Her journey started over a decade ago with a deep passion for social media and content creation. Through her online platform and the Savvy Social School, our guest is on a mission to help business owners navigate the ever-changing online landscape, find the sweet spot between the hustle and soft life, and create sustainable marketing strategies that don't lead to burnout. Today, she's going to share her story, her insights on building an engaged social media presence, and how she's empowering others to succeed with savvy, strategic, and sustainable marketing. Let's dive into the world of social media marketing and welcome to the show, Andréa Jones. Hi, Andréa.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It was a little bit of a rushed morning. My toddler didn't want to go to daycare. My baby spit up all over me, but you know what? We're here and we're happy. So I'm thankful for that.
And we're so thankful for that as well. You do seem to be a person who wears many hats of responsibilities, and one of them being a social media marketing mentor. So please share with us how your journey in social media began and what sparked your interest in this field.
I've always loved social media. As a very introverted person, I found that joining online communities made me find my space online. I started my first YouTube channel in 2007. I started blogging in 2004. So I've been online for a while. I met my husband in 2013. With that meeting, we met him. I lived in the US. He lived in Canada. I moved to a different country, and that's what kicked off my professional business. So prior to that, I was just blogging for fun. And then in 2014, when I moved to Canada, I started the business, started freelancing, and as they say, the rest is history.
And how would you say these experiences being in the online world shaped your career in social media? You've been around since 2014, you said.
Yeah. So I was just thinking about this the other day. I've been creating content online for 2 decades. Like, I feel so old. I'm only 35. So, I mean, if you do the math, it's like I've been blogging since I was in my teens, but I feel old. And I do think that I am wizened with my years on the internet, and I've seen trends come and go. I've seen platforms rise and fall. And so for me, I can bring all of that experience into how I mentor my students and my clients into shaping a social media strategy and really an entire marketing strategy that works for them and that kind of stands the test of time. For example, one of my clients was thinking about being on YouTube, and she was kind of going back and forth like, should I, shouldn't I? And I asked her, if you started a YouTube channel 5 years ago, imagine how different your business and your life would be, even if you had a handful of videos, right? Versus, starting today. Now, 5 years from now, you'll be thankful that you started that YouTube channel. So part of my experience really helps me mentor my students and my members, because I've kind of seen a lot of the trends come and go, and I have this strategic lens on the things that are lasting, things like long form video.
That's really fascinating. And I think when social media started to boom, not a lot of people understood that it could be like a career. And like you said, you've seen trends come and go. What do you think would social media look like in the next 5 years? Are you foreseeing any new trends? Do you think long form content is still going to be the best? Do you think people are going to start doing something else entirely? What is your foresight?
Yeah, this is such an interesting question. So every year on my podcast, the Mindful Marketing Podcast, I release a predictions episode, and this will be my 6th year doing that predictions episode. And so I record in October, I release in November every year. So I'm starting to prepare for this. And it's really tough to say where social media will be 5 years from now, because even looking back 5 years, things have changed so much. Like 5 years ago, TikTok was an idea. It was a dancing app for the teens, right? Like it wasn't a big deal. This was like pre-pandemic. So when I think about the next 5 years, I think that there's going to be battle against artificial intelligence, like artificially produced content. We're already seeing that there's going to be a premium on the humanness of it all. So the more we can show up like a human, the better. I can't predict what platform that will be, but there will be new ones by then. And I think more and more people will just use AI. I think it's going to be so integrated into our life, we won't even think about it anymore. So being a human, there's going to be a premium on that. And to piggyback off of that thought, I think human connection is going to be even more important than it is now. And we're starting to see this already. Engagement is down on Instagram. People keep saying engagement is down, engagement is down. And I think the reason that is because we're producing more than we're connecting. We're producing so much content, especially as business owners, that sometimes we forget the very nature of social media and why it was created in the first place. Like, why did that Tom guy create MySpace? Why did Zuck create Facebook? It wasn't so that we could like blast out our business. It was so that we can actually connect with people. And so my prediction over the next 5 years is that premium on human content and premium on human connection. And so anything else that you do in your marketing, if you can like examine it through that lens, I think you're primed to be like at the top of the top when it comes to that 5 year mark. And we look back to this moment and go, oh yeah, we were right.
I think that makes so much sense. And those predictions, I actually like look forward to seeing that. And I definitely like agree that I think AI is going to be more integrated into content creation. And even now we see people, engage with brands that are online, and people want to see more of the behind the scenes. People want to see more about less about the product but how the product was created, who the creators are, because they do want that connection. They don't want just like someone who creates content just for the sake of it. They really want to connect with the people that they watch. So I think those are really great predictions. And just talking about your career, I wanted to ask you, like, when you were starting out, what was like the biggest challenge that you faced when building your career, especially on social media, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah. So when I started in 2014, I think the biggest challenge was that businesses didn't really see the value in social media. And so a lot of the early days was like educating them on the value of it. But because of that, the amount I could charge was different than it is today. And so, I mean, it's changed so much now. Businesses, it's a non-negotiable. People know you start a business, you start your social channels. Like, go ahead and claim the social media handles while you
Mhm.
think you've got your business name, right? So it's so different between now and then. I also think it was a lot easier back then. In 2014, if you wanted to post something on social, you could create the same square graphic and the same caption and use a Hootsuite and post it to Facebook, Twitter. It was Twitter then, and Instagram, and away you go. And that was like check done for your social media strategy. That was it. It's so complicated now. Even with Instagram, you think about you've got reels, you've got stories, you've got notes, you've got broadcast channels. We also have carousel posts. Like it's so complex now. And so, it can be more challenging, but those are some of the differences I see between back then and now.
I wanted to ask you about that. If a business were to come to you for social media strategy advice, would you say that they should focus on a particular platform depending on what product or service that they offer? Because, like you said before, like you could just post the same amount of content or the same type of content throughout different platforms. But we know now that, a TikTok isn't necessarily going to be the same as a reel or even a short, even though they're the same types of videos. So I wanted to ask you, like, is the platform brands are posting on important? Should they choose a specific platform or should they do everything?
I think before asking what platform you should be on, really thinking about your community and how they want to engage with you as a business. Because not all communities are everywhere and not all communities engage the same way. Think about Duolingo, for example, which I think they're doing a fantastic job in their marketing, but a lot of their marketing is like a grassroots community effort. They post, sure, they create content with their little bird and it's fun and it's mostly on TikTok, but they're mostly in the comment sections of videos. So their strategy isn't necessarily content first, it's community first. And so I do think that you had to kind of answer that question first, because even a lot of brands are doing things like Slack channels or Facebook groups or Discord groups. It doesn't have to be like your traditional social channel. That being said, it depends on the budget of the brand. A smaller company, I would recommend picking one main platform and that be your focus. Larger companies, it is expectation that we see you everywhere. We see you multiple places, and that you are active on multiple places as well, not just have placeholder content. And so, if it's a solo brand, one platform, Instagram does seem to be one of the more popular ones. Facebook's still very popular. Do not discredit Facebook, but Facebook as a business owner, you got to have ad spend. Instagram, you can get away with not having an ad spend, and because there's so many dynamic content types, you can have a very robust preview of what your brand is through different mediums, and so that's why I tend to like Instagram as well.
And I just wanted to ask more about that, the difference between like just pushing out content and then creating a community. How would a brand starting from scratch even build that community from the start? I mean, obviously they would have to post content, but then, you can't just push out content for like 7 days a week and then expect people to just, relate and start following you. So how do brands start a community online?
My first suggestion is join a community. Be a good community member. I think it's really hard to be a leader of a community if you don't know what it feels like to be a member of one. And so I think a lot of businesses, like new businesses especially, get this backwards. They go and they, start a Facebook group, and then all of their posts are like, join my Facebook group, and get in the Facebook group, and it's crickets, and there's like nobody in there. Because, well, one, you're just new, and it's starting anything is challenging. But two, we have a ulterior motive, and people can sense that, right? Like we don't want to join something where it's like, oh, they're just going to sell to us. It feels like a Tupperware party. Like, oh, we're just going and they're just going to push stuff on us. I'm here for the free cheese, Like we don't want that experience for our community members. So be a good community member, start studying the value of community, and then you can create your own. And typically, I do recommend if you're doing a private community, you should kind of get a sense that you know at least 100 people who can join. I'm talking like Discord, Facebook group, Circle, Heartbeat, Mighty Networks, whatever it is. If you can't say, I feel pretty good, like I feel like 100 people can join, just skip it. Like you're not ready yet, and focus on your social community. For social communities, it is all about networking and collaboration. And so this is where being a good community member can be helpful. So on Instagram, as an example, since we brought that up a few times, it can look like being in the comment section of, non-competing entity. It can look like being in direct messages with referral partners. It can look like a Instagram live with, maybe a competitor. There's a lot of ways that you can do that, but it really is all about networking and giving before you get something back from it.
That's amazing advice, and I actually never thought of it like that. Like, if you want to build a community, you have to be a member first before you are able to be a leader. So, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think a lot of people are gonna, think about that and be like, "Oh, I never thought about that before." But I wanted to ask you about entrepreneurship and business, and I wanted to ask, like, how did online Drea come about, and what were the early days of being an entrepreneur looked like?
I mentioned that I started my business in 2014. It's because I fell in love. I met my husband. We fell in love. I was like in the YouTube comment section, like, I like your eyes. Um, and we got married. I moved to Canada. And prior to that, I worked in hospitality. I was a manager of a couple different spa locations in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I didn't really have a lot of online experience outside of running my own blog. And so I have a degree in English literature. So I started off by blogging for other people, but the challenge was blogging wasn't as repeatable as social media. And I was doing all sorts of writing. I was writing like product descriptions and websites and things like that. But I landed on social because it's something that people needed every single day. And so they like my packages just look different than like writing product descriptions or writing website copy. And so I landed on social media fairly quickly, probably within the first couple of weeks. But my only goal in those first couple of weeks was to make $1. I went into it and I was like, okay, how can I make $1 this week? And then next week I was like, okay, cool. How can I make $50? And then the next week I was like, okay, cool. How can I make $100? And then it just went up from there. So I started off very small, built it up from there. And honestly, I kind of stumbled onto social, but once I got it, I knew that that was the thing that I wanted to continue doing. And so after a few months, landed on social, started freelancing. And then a year and a half later, I hadn't taken a vacation yet. And I realized I need some time off. And so I planned the vacation. My husband and I, we took our vacation, but I was so stressed the whole time because it was only me. And social media doesn't sleep. The same reason that I love social media was why I found I couldn't relax on my vacation. And so then I started hiring a team. I built up my agency. And at its peak, we had 40 clients, making almost $1 million a year in revenue. And so that was kind of my journey. Started off by just trying to make $1.
It's funny that you mentioned that you found it hard to relax on vacation. I remember you, I think you mentioned on your website that you experienced burnout and you took a sabbatical. So I wanted to ask you, like, how do you balance now the demands of running a business and maintaining a healthy work-life balance?
Oh gosh, it's hard. It is very hard. I like to use the words work-life integration instead of balance because sometimes it is not balanced at all.
Mhm.
And it just depends on my season of life. Like right now in my life, I have a toddler. I just had a baby. And so the balance part is it's imbalanced towards family. Like family right now is like I'm spending way more time there than work. And I'm okay with that. And for a lot of time, it was work over a lot of other things. So I integrate it as best as I can. I also have a lot of boundaries around specifically social media because you can get dragged by the algorithm. You can get sucked in to watching TikToks, and then it's like 3 hours later, and you're like, where did my time go? So I have a lot of boundaries around that. I don't have notifications on my phone for anything but like texts and calls. So even I ordered Uber Eats the other day, and I don't have notifications. I had to log into the app to see where my order was because it's too much for me. I get so panicked over that. I also try not to rely on social media as my sole form of entertainment, which is hard because I love social media. Like I love it. And too much of a good thing is bad for me. And so I read a lot. I have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. It's my Netflix. I don't really watch a lot of Netflix, but for me, it's Kindle. And I will read like lots of books on my phone instead of choosing to scroll. And it took a long time for me to switch that habit. Basically, had to rearrange the apps on my phone so that Kindle is like easy to go to, and Instagram it takes a few clicks. So I do things like that to make sure that I'm not putting every part of me into my business because I am not the kind of person who gets deep satisfaction from working all the time. There are some people who do, okay? There are some people who work all the time and that's great for them. Most people, we need other things in our life. So I just fill it up with other things.
That's great because I feel like a lot of people, I mean, not a lot of people will understand unless you are a content creator or unless you do work in social media, that for some, it's just a medium for you to be entertained, for you to maybe share what's going on with your life. But then for people like you, like it's your job. So it's important to have those healthy boundaries to like clock off. Like you're probably not working, but then you're still on your phone. So it kind of feels like you're still in that social media bubble. So it becomes unhealthy. So I think it's really important to have those like boundaries so that you can have not the balance, but the integration that you were talking about. And knowing what you know now, I wanted to ask, like, what are some key entrepreneurial lessons that you've learned that you wish you had known when you started?
Oh gosh, I feel like this could make up a whole book. But I think the biggest thing for me now is to not compare myself to other people. One of my biggest, I don't know if regrets is the right word, but I wish I'd stuck with YouTube more. So like I started with YouTube. I love creating YouTube videos, but the more you get into YouTube videos, and especially if you start studying what the experts say, and that's air quotes for those of you listening, experts, they tell you so many things like optimizing everything. Every little part of the video is optimized. There's stuff popping up on the screen. You have animated graphics, you have cutscenes, you have title cards, you have all of these things. And that was holding me back from creating videos. And it's why I love podcasting so much too, because it's not that wild as YouTube videos are. And I recognize now that my people don't mind if my videos don't have those things. They just want the information. They don't need the flashy, the cutscenes, the popping up text, the animated emojis. They don't need all of that. They just want to learn something like, how do I price my social media services? Right. And so for me, if I can record that video and I show up as myself and I record the video and I post the video with minimal edits, they're still getting the information and they're connecting with me. And so I feel like if I had made that realization sooner, I'd be a lot farther in my YouTube journey, because I didn't post videos for a long time because I felt like they weren't good enough.
And are you posting now regularly or at least semi-regularly?
Yes. So I post at least once a week. Ideally, it would be 2 or 3 times a week, but I just had a baby this year. So I'm giving myself grace.
Mhm.
But I post once a week, and most of the time it's my podcast.
That's really exciting. We'll make sure to link your YouTube description below so we can like collaborate and you guys can follow Andrea on her journey. And well, talking about your journey, can you talk about the importance of building a personal brand, especially as an entrepreneur in the digital age?
Personal brands are so key right now, especially because we don't know what the future will bring. In the world of artificial intelligence, especially, I mentioned there's a premium on the humanness of it all, and the personal brand is just that. I think about the people who I follow on social media. I follow Sarah Blakely, who is the creator of Spanx. I don't follow Spanx, right? I follow Sarah. And so when we think about who we follow online, oftentimes it's the person behind the brand, and that's shifting even more now. I'm not saying we don't follow brands, because we do like brands, but we love the human stories of it all. We love that. And so I think personal brands are key to that. Personal brands also allow for so much more flexibility. If you're going to pivot, if you're changing, if you're growing as a person, people connect with that. They relate to that. And I think, even looking at mega platforms like Meta, for instance, Mark Zuckerberg, Adam Mosseri, like the heads of Facebook and Instagram, I see their posts way more than I see, Instagram for creators, like that account on Instagram. And I would much rather see Adam Mosseri give me an update versus some like anonymous Instagram account, even though his updates still kind of make me panic a little bit because he does a lot of them. But I still would much rather see that from the personal brand. And so I think personal brands are very powerful and there's a lot of space for them. I'm not dissing, your traditional brand account, but I think there's a lot of space for personal brands.
I think it's also kind of different creating a brand if it's for a company or a business, but it's also very kind of unique to have your personal brand, like who you show up as when you're sharing, who you are online. And I wanted to ask, like, how do people figure out what their brand is like? Where do they look? Like, is it just, like what you're into at the moment? Is it like the content that you put out? Like, how does someone who wants to show up online authentically even start to create a personal brand?
I love this question because it's a question that we were just talking about in our membership. And it's something that I call building your POV statement. And when I think about your POV, this is your perspective. It's a unique blend of like who you are as a person, your values, and your experiences. And that's what makes you as a business owner. So, for example, I want you to think about your value system. So, for me, I'm a family girl through and through. I love my family. I've got 2 kids, a lovely husband, grandmas, grandpas, all of it, nieces, nephews, love it. Okay. So that's a huge value to me, families. But also a big value to me work wise is integrity. And so when I think about my perspective on marketing, there's so many marketers who will do things like fake webinars or arbitrary deadlines and countdowns and things like that. I don't particularly care for those. So that's a value system of mine. But I also have my own perspectives, right? Like I mentioned, I met my husband on YouTube. My best friends, all of them I've met on the internet. So for me, being social and being in community is a life thing as well as a business thing. That's my perspective. Those are my values. And then I integrate my personality into it. I tend to be a talker. I'm not really like super polished. I'm not like I'm not I don't know, overly stuffy. And so when I show up, I tend to do things like podcast interviews and live streams and mediums that lend to the way that I communicate. And so that unique mix is what makes your perspective. And when you start to break down, your values, your personality traits, even the values of your community and your customers, layer in your personality, layer in those things that are unique to you. This is where you get your POV statement, and this is the thing that can be the guiding light in your marketing.
That's really fascinating. And you seem to really know so much about like marketing, social media tricks. And earlier you were talking about how you've seen trends come and go. And so I wanted to ask, like, since social media is such a landscape that is constantly changing, how do you keep up with the latest trends and ensure your strategies remain relevant and that you remain true to your personal brand?
Okay, so for me personally, I am online a lot. Like I know I mentioned I have boundaries, but my job is to know these things. So I tend to be online for my job a lot. For the people that I mentor, my students, I recommend finding someone who is online a lot. And I'm not the only person. There's a lot of people who study trends. There's a lot of people who, they have a newsletter that shares, social media news or updates or the changes and things like that. So find a guiding light who can help you navigate because there are a lot of changes happening, a lot, especially those of us on Instagram. Instagram is going through like some sort of midlife crisis and like buying the motorcycle, like getting the tattoos, like they're going through something. So we're along for the ride. But it can be a lot to keep up with. So find someone who is studying it, and also that person can help you apply it to your brand, to your business.
Yeah, I understand that completely. I would say I'm someone who is like constantly online as well, especially on TikTok. I've actually had to do this similar to what you did, like turn off my notifications completely and just start reading more because it really isn't healthy. The trends, especially now with like Gen Z and Gen Alpha being online, it's like so different from like what millennials or like what the boomers understand. Like it's a completely different language and you just have to be there when it pops up, like the trend to understand it. Otherwise, it'll take so long for it to trickle down from like TikTok to Instagram and then to Facebook. And, like it's this whole ordeal. So you really have to be there to understand. And just talking about that, I mean, what would you say are the most effective social media tactics that you recommend, especially when you're someone who wants to build an engaged and loyal audience?
So a few things here. I like to break social media down into two words. You've got the social piece and you've got the media piece. And I think the media piece is easier to understand. It's creating media, it's creating content. And instead of giving yourself a number of posts, like a goal, I want us to think about consistency in terms of time. So, not consistency in terms of posts, but in terms of time. How much time do you actually have to spend on this? And for a lot of my students, it's an hour or two a week. So, we're spending 1 to 2 hours a week creating media. That's very attainable for a lot of brands and businesses. Okay. You can do more, you can do less, but give yourself that time parameter, and that can be helpful for consistency. And when we're creating that content, we're really focusing in on not ourselves, but on our community. And the ultimate goal for me is for my community to look at my posts or look at my content and go, oh, I feel seen. Like, how does she know? That's me. That's totally me. And so if we can do that with our posts, then we can really create connection within the post itself. That's the media piece. Then we have the social piece, and I do see them as equal. So if you're spending 1 to 2 hours a week creating media, I think you should also spend 1 to 2 hours a week being social. And so that means being in your community, networking, commenting, giving with no expectation of anything in return. And I think that that is the key to really kind of building a cohesive strategy. And the thing that ties it all together is looking at the metric. So I do want you to get a little nerdy, go into your insights, look at what content is performing well, look at what isn't, and that will help you with the media piece. Then also the community piece will help you as well create more media. So as you're being social, you'll see things like trends. You'll see things like conversations that are happening. You'll be able to navigate things like, massive election happening in the US and everybody's that attention's all over there, right? Like, how do we show up and market our business during that time? Well, it takes listening and like being social. And so I think if we understand the social first, media second strategy, I think it'd be very helpful to build a cohesive social media campaign.
I wanted to ask you about that because I wanted to ask, like, how do you approach content creation to keep it fun and effective for your clients? But now that you say that, I wanted to also ask, like, how do you make it also fun and effective when you're doing the social side?
I think the fun piece is hard. It's so subjective, right? It's like some people watch this comedian and they say, "Oh, that comedian's hilarious." Then someone else can watch it and be like, I thought they were okay." So how do you create fun content? I think it's kind of knowing your audience, like knowing your community and what they think is fun. I'm a cheese ball. Like, give me a meme, give me like lowbrow humor. I'm there. And so I love it. The dad jokes version of humor, give it to me. And so I hope my community would like that and be attracted to the same thing. And so I tend to lean towards like meme content because of that. But it just depends. Like I just stumbled across Book Talk and Bookstagram, which I've been avoiding for a while, but I'm like deep in there now. And it's all about the aesthetic. You gotta have the beautiful bookcase, like color coded if you can. Yes, please. If you have that, you're in. And so part of that is just like being a member of the community, getting to understand like what's attractive to them. And then finding ways to layer that into your own brand. So if you're an author, creating an aesthetic book could be very helpful. If you are like me and you're a marketer and you're like memes and current events, using maybe a Kamala Harris GIF would be the way that you go about showcasing something. But whatever the case may be, I think either way, it's like really deeply understanding your people so that you can reflect that understanding back to them.
And during your time as a social media marketer, what have you seen as the common mistakes that businesses make on social media and how can they avoid them?
Oh gosh. Yeah. I just did like over a dozen audits on Instagram for a challenge that I did in my program. And there were two big kind of, I don't want to say things they're doing wrong, but two big areas of improvement for my members. The first one is not focusing too much on the transformation, especially when someone first lands on your Instagram bio. They need to see how you can help them and how you can help them like now, preferably. And so a lot of times we do things like I'm a copywriter, I do website copy, or I'm a web designer, I work with WordPress. And it's like, okay, great. But if you can say, I'll give you a website that you're finally proud of, it's like, whoa, yes, that's what I want. That's what I want right now. And so I think leaning away from like just listing the features and really tugging at the heartstrings of what people really want, and putting that right up front and center. And so I call this like your transformation. So uh, how are they changed after working with you? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is this community piece. During my audits, I noticed that a lot of people were hitting the content. Like they had a good mix of content, they had their transformation. I'm looking at it, I'm like, this should be working. It should be engaging, but it's a little bit of crickets in your comment section. And so digging a little bit deeper, I realized they're posting and ghosting. They'll post and then maybe they'll scroll, but they're not liking, they're not commenting, they're not participating in the app. And participation is required on social media. It's not optional. And so we're cutting back on content and we're increasing our participation in order to increase our own community engagement. And so those are the two things. Make sure people understand your transformation. How can you help them? And then make sure you're actively participating on the app. And those two things should help you win.
And how can business owners find the balance between the hustle culture and a more sustainable, enjoyable approach to marketing?
This is the big question. I will be honest in saying, I think the challenge right now is one that goes against something that I've been teaching for years, which I love a good formula. I love educating and I love using acronyms. I love using like a do this, then this, and you'll win. And I just did it just a moment ago. But I think the challenge with marketing as a whole right now is that formulaic marketing is challenging to pull off. And it may feel a little bit like your clothes don't fit anymore. Like you're like, I know this should feel like it's working, but something doesn't feel quite right. And so something that I've been really leaning into lately is curiosity and explorative play in marketing. And I do see this as part of that future, part of this humanness of it all, which is partially looking at past formulas, but also building your own formula, one that works for you. And I think there's a few pieces that go into that, understanding our POV statement, um, developing your signature content. So for me, that's my podcast. And then your supporting content like social media, email, whatever the case may be. And so, as much as I love a formula, I think figuring out what your sandbox is and then playing within that sandbox is a key for business owners as they're trying to develop their own marketing strategies.
And for everyone out there who, want to learn more about marketing strategies, now I wanted to talk about the Savvy Social School. Could you tell us more about that and what inspired you to create it?
This comes from my Canva course. I created a Canva course in 2016, and then I started editing and updating it. And I kept updating it so much I wasn't releasing any other courses. And I realized that the Canva course was actually a branding course because a lot of what I was teaching was the basics of branding. And yes, we were using Canva to design, but ultimately it was branding. So I launched the Savvy Social School in 2018 as a way to help businesses figure out how to brand themselves on social. And now it's so much bigger. In fact, we're going through our own evolution as well, going far beyond social media and helping with marketing in general. Because I mentioned the over a dozen Instagram audits I did for members. A lot of what I ended up auditing was funnels, lead magnets, websites, all of the things that really make an impactful marketing strategy, not just social media. So it's an amazing community. We've got a course element, we've got a lot of interactive live classes, but ultimately my goal is to help business owners and personal brands find the balance between sustainable marketing and also our own well-being as humans.
And could you tell us what do you mean when you say sustainable marketing?
It's the kind of marketing that we could do time and time again. It's the kind of marketing that I did when I had two babies and I still was able to release every podcast episode. Like I never missed a week. There are other things I missed. There are other things that kind of were lower priority. But for me, the main thing was my podcast. And it was an easy-ish thing for me to continue to do because I had committed to that. And so I want to help other people find the same thing. Like how do we create a marketing system that doesn't require all of our energy every day? And it is something that will last if life happens. Like, kids get sick. We got a aging parent that we've got to take care of. We have our chronic illness flare up. Like, how do we still maintain our marketing? And that is the question that I try to answer.
And what makes the Savvy Social School different from other social media training programs out there?
I'm very hands-on. I like to tell my members that there's no such thing as a bad question. There's no such thing as a wrong question, and you have unlimited support. Now, I'm not going to bully you into like asking questions, but I'm available if you need it. And a lot of times I'm recording a Loom video, I'm, sending a voice note. And so sometimes when you join a program, you join it and there's like a whole bunch of other people, other coaches and things. It's mostly me. It's mostly me, and you have my attention. And so I think that's what sets it apart a little bit.
Could you tell us like some of the key principles that you emphasize in your mentorship when it comes to succeeding in social media marketing?
Oh, yeah. Boundaries all the way. I'm a huge fan of boundaries. I want you to identify your relationship with social media. And in fact, right when you join, you go through our kind of onboarding. I have a meditation that helps our members really decide what the relationship is with social media. Because if you don't decide, then you'll end up in the rabbit holes, like doom scrolling, and you're like, why am I even on Instagram right now? Right. So deciding your relationship with social media, figuring out what your signature content will be, figuring out what your supportive content will be, and then giving yourself time limits to all of this, right? And time limits means you're giving yourself a chance to learn. Um, I think sometimes we assume that we can just start posting every day on social media, and it is a skill and it takes a lot of time. And so I help you develop that skill over time and not try to like truncate time and do it too quickly. Um, and also be able to do it around life and actually, I don't know, running your business because we got to do that too.
And I wanted to ask you, like, how do you help business owners find their groove in social media? Because you were talking about it earlier, like, if you're a brand or you have a business, you have to have a social media presence, and not all business owners are social media savvy. They do think sometimes that all you have to do is post and ghost, like you said, and that's not something that they should be doing. So, how do you help them enjoy the process of, being on social media?
Yeah. And see this, okay, so full transparency, this is a missing piece of my program that we're just now starting because I think it's easy to feel accomplished. You watch a course, you're like, oh, I'm going to go on TikTok. So you watch my TikTok course. And then you're like, great. And you feel like you can check off the box. But a big piece to this is experimentation. And experimenting is a very vulnerable process. Like as adults, we want to just show up and like be fully ready, polished, perfect. But a lot of the times, those first couple of posts, they're going to be cringy, and being cringe is part of the process. And so we've built out this space in our program. We call it the sandbox, where we're experimenting together. So we feel a little less cringe because, okay, we're all being cringe right now. And we can learn from each other. Like, I tried this post, it didn't work. Or I tried this style and it kind of worked. I'm going to try it again. And then you see what someone else is trying. And you're like, maybe I'll try that too. And so this experimentation piece, I think, is the key to actually moving forward with social media because I don't think there's a way to just read the course and then open up, I don't know, Facebook and like immediately know how to do everything. Like you've got to be able to test and experiment and play and be curious and just part of the process.
Mhm. And can you share some success stories of individuals or businesses that have transformed their social media presence after joining the Savvy Social School?
Yes, one of my mentees, Jody, she actually just sent me this last week. So she is a marketing coach for vacation rentals, like people who have like Airbnbs and VBRO and things like that. So she's been really struggling with content creation specifically, feeling like, especially with the election cycle, like a lot of people are so focused on that they're not really focused on her, or more importantly, like she's in a launch, like growing her program. And so she used a meme from the debates, Kamala Harris, and did like a carousel post and then shared it to her stories. And she then sent me a Voxer message and said her client booked her biggest package because she'd been following her for a while, saw that post and was like, oh, yeah, I meant to book with her, and then went and booked with her immediately. And so it's stories like that where I'm like, ah, yes, this is why I do what I do, because it's not one specific post that changed that person's mind. They had been following her for a while. It was her just deciding to show up that day that made the difference. And that is what I want to help people do.
Well, there might be some audience listeners out there who want to join the Savvy Social School. Could you tell us what kind of support members receive to help them grow their businesses?
Yes. So we have live sessions every single month, anywhere from live trainings to co working spaces, brainstorming sessions, and more. We have over 30 courses and training materials available as well. I'm a huge fan of templates, as well as I've been building out custom GPTs lately to help with ideation. So, like the POV statement is a great example of one where I basically train AI on my process and it can help you. It's like a fast track through answering all the questions and building out your statement. And we have a really lovely community of business owners. So people who, they generally have busy lives, but they really are ambitious and they want to grow their business. And so that's a little peek into what the school is like.
And on your website, you do write out your five core values: proactive excellence, fierce integrity, passionate commitment, positive communication, and spirit of collaboration. These are all central to your work. How do these values influence your daily business operations?
Yeah. So let's take fierce integrity, for example. I think it's so easy as a marketer to overmarket. I know all the tricks. I love studying human psychology, and humans were kind of easy to trick, right? This is why so many people get grifted all the time. And so I feel like it's my duty as a marketer to be overly transparent in that integrity and make sure I'm, as much as I possibly can, not trying to trick someone into the program. So, for example, I could say, join the program and you too can, get, $4,500 contracts in your sleep, because that's what happened to Jody. But I'm not going to phrase it that way. I'm going to say this is one example of one person's experience. And so fierce integrity, huge piece of what I do. Passionate commitment. I love social media. I study it. I am on it too much still to this day. But it's one of the things that's great about what I do, is that you're, learning from someone who is genuinely interested in it. And then I'll take spirit of collaboration as an example. I mentioned this this is my newest one. I've had four for a long time. And then I added spirit of collaboration last year because the work that I do requires input from the business owners and the brands that I work with. And so I'm not the kind of person where you get to show up and then just sit back and chillax. We gonna work. And so part of that work is us coming together. And so how it shows up in my program is you got to raise your hand for me to call on you and get you support. I will poke you sometimes, be like, hey, you okay? You good? But if you don't tell me that you're good, then I just assume everything is great. So that spirit of collaboration piece is so important to showing up and me helping you. And so that's how it shows up in my business.
And how do you maintain your integrity while navigating the often fast paced and sometimes superficial world of social media?
It's tough. I am a very transparent person, and I did get my start on YouTube. However, I'm also a very private person. And so part of the integrity for me is looking through my own boundaries around sharing. So for example, I used to overshare a little bit about my financial situation, but that's not fair to my family and to those in my life. So I don't do that anymore. I will allude to some things, but I don't necessarily overshare. That's personal. And then other things like there's a difference between authenticity and transparency. And so for me, I show up as my authentic self, but I'm not going to share every little thing about my life. That's me standing in my integrity. And I know for a fact that it has lost me business. An example would be, I have people reach out to me sometimes. They get on a call and they're like, I'm looking for some social media strategy. Here are my goals. Here's where I'm going. And I'm like, I think we need to step back and you need something else before social strategy. And I know I'm talking myself out of business at that point, and I could absolutely sell them one of my packages. But ultimately, if I see something, I'm like, you need an offer creation expert. You need, some branding support. Maybe we need to work on your website, your funnels. Like a lot of steps need to happen before social media. And so sometimes that means I'm not getting paid, but that's me again standing in my integrity. So those are some ways how it shows up for me.
And I wanted to ask you about some personal inspirations and future goals. Have there been people who served as your biggest inspirations or mentors throughout your career, and how have they influenced your work?
Yeah. So my first mentor, Afton Negrea, she is a digital marketing strategist and she's now a Kajabi expert, told me or mentored me on becoming embeddable, like so embedded into someone's business and their processes that they can't imagine running it without you. And that's something that has stuck with me. And it's why, in the Savvy Social School, for instance, we don't stop at social media. Like if I see something and I'm like, well, we need to work on your lead magnet, we're going to work on your lead magnet, even though that has nothing to do with social media because it all is integrated. But someone else who I really admire is Miley Teal. She's the founder of Curlbox. She recently just sold her company, and she is also a mom. and has two kids. And I'm a mom. I have two kids. And the way that she shows up on social media is so graceful and thoughtful and elegant. And she's definitely someone who I look to as like a standard of excellence in terms of being authentic without oversharing and being transparent without like coming from like a deeply genuine place. And so she's one who I'm like, ah, aspiration, hashtag goals. Like I wish I could like just be her when I grow up.
And could you share some of the future goals and projects that you're excited for both Online Drea, the Savvy Social School, and your podcast?
Yeah. So the podcast this year went through a rebrand, and my business as a whole, we're going through a rebrand right now. I spent the last 10 years talking about social media and realized that I often talk a lot about marketing as well, specifically mindful marketing. So my podcast this year rebranded from the Savvy Social podcast to the Mindful Marketing podcast. And the Savvy Social School is going through the same iteration. I won't reveal the name just yet, but if you're in the school, you already have heard it. I'm doing a series called The Launch Diaries, where I take my members behind the scenes of the entire rebranding process. And so I am expanding. It's actually what I'm already doing. I'm renaming what I'm already doing, which is so far beyond just social media and really building marketing ecosystems that established business owners can repeat again and again without burning out.
And what advice would you give to someone just starting out on social media or in the digital marketing industry?
Oh gosh, if you feel overwhelmed, it's not you. I promise you. There are so many different things that you have to learn when you're just starting out here. And start slowly. I think it's very easy to look at another business and go, "Mm, they have it all together." But even myself, someone who is a social media professional, when I started off, I didn't have a website, I didn't have a branded email, I didn't even have an Instagram. And so you don't need all of those things to get started. You can take baby steps. I started off on Fiverr and Upwork selling my services. You can take baby steps and you can layer in those things over time. Like when you look at something like my brand for the first time, just know it took 10 years to get here and I'm still vastly imperfect. So take your time, you will get there.
And looking back at your journey, what are you most proud of and what do you hope to achieve in the coming years?
I'm really proud of my podcast. Last year, we won Best in Business for the Canadian Podcast Awards, which
Congratulations.
is just, thank you. I'm still reeling over this. My podcast is my pride and joy. We have over 324 episodes as of this week. And I'm really proud of like the work that I put into that. So I'd say my podcast.
And just before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to share to our listeners? Maybe advice, anything at all?
I still want to stand on the fact that community is everything. I think it's very easy to feel alone in business, especially if you have an online business that's like maybe digital. Like my husband's parents still do not understand what I do. Um, they're like, that's nice. So, and neither of them are on social media at all. So they don't get it. And that can feel isolating. And so find your people. Like if anything you take away from this is it's like find your pocket, your community, your people, and that will help you as you develop your marketing, as you develop your business.
Thank you so much. And do you want to share anything that you're working on in the future? Do you want to maybe plug anything else before we go?
Yeah. So listen to the podcast, Mindful Marketing Podcast. And also, if you resonated with the things that I said today, I have a free challenge. It's called the Social Media Reset Challenge. If you're feeling a little meh or wah wah about social media, this challenge is for you to help you reestablish your relationship with social media. And I don't know, maybe have fun again on social. So you can check that out at onlinedrea.com/reset. It's also on the homepage of my website at onlinedrea.com.
We'll make sure to link all of that in our description so people can find you easier. Thank you so much, Andrea, for the time, for gracing our podcast and sharing your wisdom with our listeners. And of course, thank you to everyone who listened to us today. This has been your host, Patricia. And remember, for all your professional business and technical writing needs, there's only one way to go, and that's with the right direction. See you guys soon. Goodbye.